Hello and welcome. You're watching Race to Power. My name is Mohammed Saleh. And on the show today, Jimmy Kimmel's show was suspended when Kimmel took a dig at Donald Trump's level of grief in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's murder. And the American president has in fact gone so far as to say that TV networks that give him bad publicity should have their licenses taken away. In a country that takes great pride in calling itself the land of the free, the question is this: is the right for free speech still protected in the United States? And in Nepal, the former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli has moved into his private residence after spending 9 days in the army's protection. But the question is obviously this: what political future now awaits the people of Nepal? But let's start with this big story from the United States, where there is a debate about free speech that is raging in the United States of America in the aftermath of the murder of the right-wing political influencer Charlie Kirk. The discourse has largely been political and bipartisan, and it is led by none other than the American President Donald Trump himself. Now, Trump responded to a question about the TV host Jimmy Kimmel while returning to the US following his visit to the United Kingdom. Now, the American president hailed the decision of Jimmy Kimmel's show being suspended and called Jimmy Kimmel a guy with no talent. Listen to what was said by the American president.
Who would you like to see replace Kimmel on late night?
Well, a lot of people, anybody could replace him. Guy had no talent. Kimmel look, he was fired. He had no talent. He's a whack job, but he had no talent. And more importantly than talent, he had no, because a lot of people have no talent, they get ratings. But he had no ratings. His ratings were worse than Colbert, I think. They got rid of Colbert, which was a good thing to do.
Now, Donald Trump did not just stop at Jimmy Kimmel. The Republican president also slammed TV networks, claiming that 97% of all networks in America are against him and only give him bad publicity. While Trump did not quote as to what report he was reading out his statistic from, the American president, in fact, went as far as to say that the licenses of networks that cover him in a bad light should be taken away. Listen in.
Host is on network television. There is a licensing. I'll give you an example. I read someplace that the networks were 97% against me. I get 97% negative, and yet I won easily. I won all 7 swing states, popular, won everything. And if they're 97% against, they give me only bad publicity or press. I mean, they're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away. It would be up to Brendan Carp.
All right, so their licenses should be taken away. That's what he says. Now, following the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel's show, several comedians in the United States are now rallying their support for the celebrity night show host. Listen.
I felt like I should ramp things up, just because that's what we do. You know, our medium challenges the status quo, and be it conservative or liberal, we create discourse, and I think that's needed, right, in a democracy.
Comedy is the last vestige of free speech that we have. It's the first wall of defense. It's what tyranny always takes away first, right? Comedy, humorous when it comes to politics and political cartoons, it's always been right there.
Now, in the United States, there is a rising concern about the limitations on free speech, majorly against left-leaning groups and individuals or those who are critical of the current administration. On the other hand, when Charlie Kirk was murdered on the 10th of September, the mass condemnation was based on the common belief that there needs to be tolerance for difference of opinion, and violence crosses a clear red line. All right, now joining us on the broadcast, we've got Mr. Ray Locker, who's a senior journalist, author and a columnist. He's joining us live on WION. Mr. Locker, this controversy of Jimmy Kimmel being taken off air, his show being suspended, possibly after he took a dig at Donald Trump grieving over Charlie Kirk and the extent of his grief. You know, this is played up in a very, very big way. And then the president to come out and say that this was in fact a talent issue. He had no ratings. Why is it that this has become such a huge controversy in the United States?
Well, first of all, when Charlie Kirk was murdered last week, it was inevitable that Trump would try to weaponize that against his political opponents. And we're seeing exactly that. You know, people are being attacked for not showing enough reverence to Kirk, who most Americans have never really heard of. And by the way, let's just say at the outset, it's terrible to kill people you don't agree with. That should never be condoned by anybody. And anybody who does condone that deserves to be shunned. But going back to Kimmel, he's been a thorn in Trump's side for a long time. We saw back in July when Colbert's show was canceled. Trump said Jimmy Kimmel is next. So he's been targeting him for a long time, and it was just looking for a reason to do it.
And also, the American president quoted a statistic. We do not know where he came up with that number, where he said 97% of American TV networks only cover him in a bad way and give him bad publicity. He also went on to state that they should have their licenses taken away. This is an American president talking about networks, media networks in the United States of America. What does this do for free speech in the United States, a country that calls itself the land of the free?
Well, it makes us look like hypocrites, doesn't it? Or we're going to preach to another country that it's not doing right by, its broadcasters or other people speaking out. I mean, if we were to say, to India, hey, you shouldn't have done that to some Congress party supporter, well, what credibility do we have? We don't have any. I mean, particularly when it comes from the White House. We should be better than that. But I mean, look, people in general always are looking for ways to silence people they disagree with. That's happened for a long time. But if you're a civil libertarian like I am, everybody has the right to say what they want to say, where they want to say it. And for government to step in and use the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, to try to strong-arm a TV network to silence a critic, that's wrong.
Indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Ray Locker, for joining us with that perspective there.
Thanks.
All right, now staying on with more news from the United States of America, where protests against the American President Donald Trump's immigration policies have intensified across the United States. In the latest show of anger, hundreds of demonstrators, in fact, rallied both inside and outside of the 26th Federal Plaza in Manhattan. Now, the Federal Tower is now at the center of the growing outrage over the treatment of migrants. The building houses offices for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the Department of Homeland Security, and also an immigration court. The demonstration, organized by immigrant rights groups and local leaders, aimed to enforce compliance with a court order requiring improvements in detention conditions. Now, outside the building, over 70 protesters staged a sit-in, blocking the garage entrance used by Immigration and Customs Enforcement to transport detainees in and out of the facility. Meanwhile, city and state officials pressed for access to the ICE detention areas inside of the building. New York City Comptroller Brad Lander and 10 state lawmakers demanded entry to the 10th floor, where ICE runs holding cells criticized for unsafe and unsanitary conditions. The federal officers blocked their entry when the group refused to leave the agents, detained all 11 officials, and the organizers said that more than 75 people were taken into custody throughout the day by both the city police and the federal agents. In Washington's Mount Pleasant neighborhood, dozens of residents gathered to protest as ICE officers took a man into custody.
They don't feel secure. They prefer to stay home in their houses, not go to work, not to go shopping, because they are afraid of ICE because of the situation here in D.C. For us, thankfully, we've been able to fix our documents, but we don't feel secure for the simple fact that we are Latino.
Now, Trump launched an immigration enforcement campaign after taking office in January, but as the crackdown expanded and arrests included many people without criminal records, the public support for his immigration policies has declined. All right, now joining us on the broadcast, we've got our correspondent Susan Tehrani, who's joining us live from New York. Susan, this of course is a big deal, isn't it? Anti-ICE protests, the fact that Trump has made immigration crackdown such a big issue? Why are we witnessing protests against some of these raids by the anti-immigration groups?
Yeah, so the story that you mentioned here in New York at 26 Federal Plaza was with, as you mentioned, 11 lawmakers who tried to get into the 10th floor of this federal building, which has somewhat become notorious with being a holding place for migrants. Lawmakers say that they are concerned about human rights violations, the sanitary situation up there, and generally because it's so closed door, they say that they have a right to go and make sure that everything is in order. Again, that New York incident, which just happened, comes at the heels of a federal judge ruling that ICE needs to be more mindful about treating migrants at these different facilities. So it appears that's why they decided to go there. ICE calls it a stunt. We saw 71 other demonstrators get arrested, including these 11 lawmakers that went to the federal building. As we are talking just a few minutes ago, there's been demonstrations against ICE in Chicago now. What's significant is Chicago and New York are considered to be sanctuary cities, which means that law enforcement is not required to cooperate with ICE. So we're going to continue to see this tug of war between lawmakers in these sanctuary cities and ICE, who claims that we're just trying to do our job and we have a directive from the higher ups to carry out these arrests and deportation processes.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Susan Tehrani, for joining us with all those updates then. All right, let's now shift our attention to what is happening in Nepal, where the deposed Nepalese Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli has now finally relocated from the protection of the army barracks to a private residence after having spent 9 days in the army's protection. Remember, on the 9th of September, KP Sharma Oli had been shifted to the army barracks, likely in the Shivpuri forest area north of Kathmandu, immediately after stepping down, as the Gen Z protests had turned very violent.
Returned his residence. Actually, that is temporary residence, because his residence has been totally vandalized, arsoned, and that house cannot be used immediately. So he has residing in a temporary residence.
Now, the CPN UML chairman's current place of residence has not been disclosed. However, media reports say that KP Sharma Oli is relocated to a private home in Gundu Bhaktapur, around 15 kilometers east of Kathmandu. On the second day of the Gen Z protest, the demonstrators in fact burned the private residence of KP Sharma Oli in Balakot, Bhaktapur to ashes. Now, Oli was at his official residence of the Prime Minister when the protesters partially burnt down the Prime Minister's office in Balakot. He was safely then evacuated by the Nepalese army, which dispatched a helicopter for him to be airlifted. In addition to the former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli, the other former Prime Ministers such as Pushpa Kamal Dahal Prachanda and Sher Bahadur Dyoba and Jhalanath Kanal, Madhav Kumar Nepal and several other senior politicians had also been kept under army's protection for several days. However, all of them have since left the protection of the army barracks except for the Nepali Congress president, Sher Bahadur Dyoba, and his wife, the former foreign minister Arzu Rana Dyoba, who, remember, had been assaulted by the protesters, and they still continue to remain under military protection. Now, Sher Bahadur Dyoba and Arzu Rana Dyoba were injured when the protesters attacked them and are currently receiving treatment in a hospital under army's protection. And our correspondent Saloni Murarka has been tracking the story very closely for us and has sent us this report from Kathmandu, Nepal. Listen in.
KP Sharma Oli, former Prime Minister of Nepal, has finally moved out of the Nepal Army protection and to a temporary residence here in Kathmandu Valley. He has been under Army's protection since September 9th. That's the day when he had to step down from his position following the violent protests that broke out across Nepal. During the protest, his house was also torched and vandalized. And CPN-UML leaders have confirmed that he has been residing in a temporary residence here in the valley. At this moment, I'm standing right outside the CPN-UML party office, the KP Sharma Oli's party, which was also torched and vandalized completely. However, the party leaders held a Constitution Day celebration right in this compound, calling out for the protection of the Constitution and also for an investigation into the violence that broke out last week across Nepal. I'm Saloni Murarka reporting for WION from Kathmandu, Nepal.
The Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf founder Imran Khan has written a letter to the country's Supreme Court describing the hardships during his more than 2 years in prison. The letter, titled Denial of Justice and Fundamental Rights, a call to the Supreme Court's calls on Pakistan's Chief Justice Yahya Afridi to urgently hear the pending petitions against him. In his letter, the former Prime Minister has complained of continuous solitary confinement and has alleged that the doors of justice remain shut for him and for his wife. The PTI founder also noted that he had spent over 772 days behind bars and urged the court to hear the over 300 cases filed against him. The letter also requested the medical treatment for Imran Khan's spouse, Bushra Bibi, who had been jailed for about 7 years in a graft case. Now, Imran Khan also sought regular phone calls to his sons as per jail regulations. Now, Imran Khan has alleged that thousands of PTI supporters remain in prison, with some, including his nephew, subjected to military trials in violation of the constitutional rights. Now, earlier, Pakistan's Supreme Court had granted major relief to Imran Khan in a slew of different cases related to violence on the 9th of May in 2023. A 3-member bench of Pakistan's top court had granted bail to the PTI party founder. However, Imran Khan continues to remain in prison in connection to the graft charges in the £190 million Al-Khadir Trust case. Now, since the 2000s, the global order in the world of economics is showing a tectonic shift. That change is fast-tracked over the last decade. The so-called Global South is increasingly looking to rewrite the rules of the world economy. If the data over the past decade is anything to go by, then the Global South's initiatives seem to be clearly working. The Group of Seven, or the G7, is the forum of the 7 most highly industrialized democratic nations with significant economic and political power globally. It includes nations such as Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom and the United States. On the other hand, the Global South consists of countries that are mostly located in Asia, Latin America and Africa. As the developing nations, they tend to have lower per capita incomes, greater poverty rates and a common economic and colonial past. The G7 nations have had disproportionate influence over the years, but the Global South is now pushing for more representation and a more equitable global system. The BRICS group, coined in 2001 after Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, is part of the Global South. The contribution of the BRICS group to the world GDP surpassed the G7 in 2023, with a share of 32.1% compared to the developed group's 29.9%. Now, the Global South's combined share of global GDP and also its influence on the world governance continues to expand. Non-G7 economies now contribute more than 41% of the global GDP, with their share and impact expected to grow further. Now, according to the IMF's 2025 outlook, emerging market and developing economies account for about 41.2% of the global GDP, a historic high. In comparison, the advanced economies represent about 58.8%. While that is still higher, the G7's relative share has continued to steadily decline from about 65% in the year 2000. For the Global South, leading this charge are nations like China and India. Now, China makes up about 16.9% of the world GDP, and India is rapidly consolidating its position as the 4th largest global economy. The latest US-led trade war seems to reflect that change in the world order. But the Asian giants have stood their ground amidst President Trump's tariff rhetoric. The US imposed 50% tariffs on India, and it also attacked the country for its Russian oil purchases. But in response, India has diplomatically pointed to America's double standards and has continued to purchase Russian energy. Now, China, on the other hand, has used leverage tactics to strong-arm the United States in talks. Now, Albania's AI-generated minister has issued her first address to the parliament. Named Diela, the AI lawmaker responded to criticism from the opposition and said that she is not here to replace humans but to actually help them out. Listen it.
I am not here to replace human beings, but to help them. Indeed, I have no citizenship, but I have no ambitions or personal interests either. I only have data at my disposal. I am eager to learn new information.
Now, elections are scheduled to be held in Cameroon next month, but ahead of the presidential polls on the 12th of October, armed separatists have enforced a month-long lockdown. Now, several English-speaking regions in Cameroon are particularly facing a shutdown of schools and other educational institutions, and students and teachers are very worried about the scale of the impact, while some institutions operate silently. There is fear that separatist activities may intensify.
The disruption of schools these past 2 weeks has affected us greatly. This is because we had syllabus to cover this first term, but due to the ghost town, we are unable to cover them. So it has affected us greatly, and students sometimes are scared to come to school, especially teachers, since they are being threatened that if they come, something might happen.
In fact, here you cannot be proud to say publicly that you are a teacher. You go to the class in kind of hiding.
The shutdown in certain areas had begun earlier in the month after a long-drawn internal conflict since 2016 continues to escalate between the northwest and the southwest regions. And according to Human Rights Watch, the violence has killed about 6,000 civilians and has severely disrupted Cameroon's educational system. In Greece, members and supporters of the Communist Party hung banners at the iconic Acropolis, Greece's most famous landmark. The banners were unfurled in support of Gaza with words in Greek that read, "Stop the genocide." Take a look. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Race to Power. Thanks for watching.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
As the bads of Bollywood makes waves online, we meet the star actors that make Imran Khan's directorial debut. Know why Guillermo del Toro is parting with some of his valuable belongings. and decode if couture can really be modern. All this and much more with me, Diksha Bisla, on WION at these times.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Hello and welcome. You're watching WION The World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start this broadcast by taking a quick look at what is making headlines at this hour. The UNGA votes to allow the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to address the body's high-level meeting via a video link after the United States denied him a visa to visit the United States for the UNGA summit. The United Nations Security Council votes to reimpose sanctions on Iran after Britain, France and Germany accused Tehran of violating the landmark agreement on managing its nuclear activities. And Estonia says that its airspace was violated by 3 Russian jets. Estonia has summoned the Russian charge d'affaires over the incident. And 2 nuclear-powered submarines of Russia's Pacific Fleet have successfully launched cruise missiles during the naval exercises in the Sea of Okhotsk. And the Associated Press reports that Pakistan's Defence Minister Khwaja Asif has said that his country's nuclear program can be made available to Saudi Arabia under the Defence Pact. The Pakistan and Saudi Arabia signed a Defence Pact on Wednesday. And the United Kingdom's Foreign Intelligence Service, the MI6, on Friday launched a dark web portal to try and recruit spies in Russia and around the world by offering them a secure communications channel. And Russian athletes can participate in next year's Milano Cortina Winter Olympics, but only under a neutral banner and if they meet with the strict conditions, similar to the rules that were set by the IOC for the 2024 Parisian Games. Alright, so let's start this broadcast with some breaking news that's just come in, where tensions have flared over the Baltic skies today as Estonia has said that at least about 3 Russian warplanes intruded into its airspace in a brazen violation. And this move has triggered a fierce diplomatic protest and a fresh fear for the NATO's eastern flank. The 3 Russian MiG-31 jets sliced into the Estonian airspace without warning for 12 full minutes. These Russian fighter jets apparently rode over the Gulf of Finland, pushing the boundaries and testing NATO's resolve. The Tallinn's foreign ministry moved swiftly. It summoned the Russian charge d'affaires to deliver a stern protest. Now, this is the latest flashpoint in the weeks that have been marred by repeated Russian provocations. Now, the incursion has come on the heels of the earlier Russian drone violations in the Polish and the Romanian airspace and incidents that Russia has denied targeting these nations. Russia said that its forces had been attacking Ukraine at the time of the drone incursion and that it had not intended to hit targets in Poland or Romania. Poland has dismissed this argument and has said that the drones were sent into the Polish airspace intentionally to test the capabilities of Poland and NATO to respond. NATO has also condemned these violations, pledging to reinforce air defences along the eastern frontier.